Australians' standard of living, as I said before the break, will get worse, we're told, not better, over the next 4 decades. According to the OECD, the Paris-headquartered group has downgraded its forecast for Australia per capita GDP off the back of a rapidly ageing population and a massive increase in public spending. Let's get the reaction of my economics panel. Let's bring them in now. From Melbourne, business commentator Terry McCrann, and from Sydney, the founder of the Switzer report, Peter Switzer. Well, we can't say we weren't warned, Terry. 2050 as well, net zero, all colliding at the one time.
Well, and none of this really has to accommodate the consequences of the pandemic and the way we've built up a massive debt, trying to get our way through 2020 and 2021. I think we should put this in context, Peter, that this is really an indication of what's the challenge to all developed economies. It's not just Australia. But Australia in particular has had a golden 2 decades on very easy growth, thanks to China and thanks to population growth. Now, population growth is the lazy growth where you bring in more and more people, you get bigger, but you don't necessarily get better, and you don't necessarily improve our living standards. So our living standards have already been growing quite slowly over the last decade. It's not because of the GFC, not because of the pandemic. It's because of the more fundamental reality that we got better, but we haven't been more productive. And so output per person, which is the basis of building living standards, has not been rising. We've had growth in aggregate terms, but not in per capita terms. And we've had the easy years, and now we've got the challenges going forward. And it's going to be much more difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know our defence spending has really got to move up and up and up and add that into the mix. None of that's cheap. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to another issue. The Reserve Bank has sounded a positive note on labour markets, saying that all these jobs that we've lost due to Delta and the lockdowns will be recovered by Christmas. Well, fingers crossed. But the RBA says it won't budge on interest rates. We know that, Peter, there's been some prudential pressure on banks not to lend to borrowers who can't repay. I think they come in at the end of this month, at the end of October. So what's likely going to happen if rates stay low to house prices?
Well, house prices, I think, are going to come off the boil in 2022. The APRA moves will make it harder for people to get loans. Also, we're seeing the supply of properties starting to increase after lockdown. So if you look at all the predictions by economists, most think that we're talking single-digit rises in the capital cities, Sydney and Melbourne, in 2022. It might start off strongly, but over the course of the year, it'll come off the boil. But I really do think the Reserve Bank is having a little bit of a lend of us and kind of not telling us the completely true story. On jobs, look, the numbers may well get back. The jobs that have been lost may come back, Peter, but the same kinds of jobs aren't going to be coming back. Look at the pics that you were showing of Melbourne CBD. Businesses there are not going to be reissuing those jobs en masse before Christmas. It's going to probably take a year or two, and then a lot of people want to work from home. So a lot of the cafes, a lot of the businesses that looked after office workers, they're not going to offer the same jobs, but those jobs may well be in the suburbs. So I can believe that because there's always a big rebound after a lockdown. But the other big issue around the Reserve Bank is the interest rates. Now, they're promising not to raise their cash rate to 2024. But guess what? The bank's been getting cheap money for the last year or so to help us with the coronavirus. That cheap money is now drying up. It was provided by APRA, made it possible for them to get cheap money, and the RBA gave them cheap money. That's now drying up. Banks will raise interest rates before the cash rate goes up. So anyone out there with a home loan, they should be thinking maybe 2022, the banks will start raising interest rates out of cycle.
Of course, down in Victoria, Melbourne in particular, there might be a surplus amount of housing stock, because once we can move, get outside of our houses, I suspect a lot of people are going to say, enough. I'm out of Victoria. Jeff Kennett said to me recently, Terry, it took the state nearly 30 years to get back after the Kane Kearney years to a position where there wasn't that net loss of people every year. We know a lot of Melburnians, of course, going into country Victoria, but a lot of them are going back to Queensland, interstate and elsewhere. That's a worry.
Well, indeed, Peter. And I don't know that as Peter said, we're not out of the woods by any means. We're getting to 2022. Let's just see how 2022 pans out, not only with the virus, but with the global economy. And it's not interest rates in Australia that I'm worried about. It's interest rates in America, because I think they'll be going up much quicker than they might go up in Australia. And this is the reality in Victoria is there's going to be a long time coming back to those businesses. But as you say, the prospect is likely to see Victoria losing population through the course of 2022. And that would just add to the comments that Peter made about housing prices not being not going up in double digits again.
Yeah, Peter Switzer, how do you see the world economic climate? We know that there's a lot of energy issues in the United Kingdom right now. There's concern in particular, migrant movements out of Afghanistan through Europe again, and perhaps another wave come winter of serious COVID lockdowns. How's it going to play out?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of trepidation about the outlook for the global economy, and we've seen the IMF downgrade the global economy, not by a real lot. And look, I've got to say, Peter, there are like the energy issues. If energy prices keep on rising, that will hurt international growth. I think you're right. We can't be complacent about the coronavirus. In the UK, there's still a lot of unvaccinated people, and the big issue is new variants do come out of populations where there's a lot of unvaccinated people. So I don't think we can be complacent. I will say this, that the chief economist at Westpac, Bill Evans, is very positive about the Aussie economy for next year. He's got a 7% growth number. That's huge. And I hope he's right. But if the international curveballs work against us and these shortages of supply continue, that could be a break on our development without a doubt.
Yeah, well, spot on. I think you're absolutely right there. Let's hope it is 7% next year. Wouldn't that be nice? Gentlemen, thank you as always. Peter Switzer, Terry McCrann, thank you for your time.